Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe.
Welcome back, darlings. I'm TV host, entertainment journalist, Cognac Wellerlane, and I am just about to do a very fascinating interview with a professional education expert, his name is Dr. Steve Imber. So let's take a look at this fascinating interview with Dr. Steve Imber. Welcome, darlings. I'm TV host, entertainment journalist, Cognac Wellerlane, and I have a very special guest today. I usually interview actors and filmmakers, but today I have somebody very different. He is a special educational expert, and his name is Dr. Steve Imber. And welcome, Steve, to would you prefer me to call you Dr. Imber, or would you prefer me to call you Steve, since we're friends?
You can call me Dr. Steve. How's that?
Dr. Steve, I love it.
All
Okay.
right.
Dr. Steve, welcome to my pink kitchen. As you can see behind me, I have a pink kitchen. I love the color pink. So I'm going to tell
wear it well.
Thank you, darling. Thank you, darling. I'm going to tell my audience a little bit about you before we get into the questions. Dr. Imber has served as a professor of special education for over 45 years. He is a special expertise in the matters of inclusion, differentiated instruction, behavior management, including functional behavioral analysts and positive behavior intervention support evaluation procedures related to discipline and anti-bullying strategies. He has conducted extensive research on independent educational evaluations and has been a frequent presenter at local, state, regional, and national conferences. He has also been published in a number of nationally referred journals in psychology and special education. He has held regional and national offices in this field. Now, Dr. Steve, tell my audience what inspired you to become a professor of special education. That's always what I ask everybody, why they decide to take that career path in their life.
Well, it's a really good question. I was studying in the field of clinical psychology at the University of Connecticut. I'd completed a year's doctoral work, and I took some time to decide what I wanted to do. And I took a position as a teacher. And I worked with young kids. I worked with kids of primary, elementary age, and even kids at the middle and high school level in an ungraded classroom. And although the school did not advertise itself as a special education school, and in fact, there were children who were gifted who attended this school, there were a number of kids that had various special needs. My experience in working with these kids was I began to realize that if I were going to continue in clinical psychology or some other aspect of psychology, I really needed to understand so much more about learning. And I contacted Dr. Isabel Lieberman, who was becoming a very, very well-known and well-respected professor, trained in clinical psychology at Yale University. And I applied to her master level program, and I got accepted, and I studied, and I ended up continuing. Did my doctorate with a colleague of hers, Dr. A.J. Papanico at the University of Connecticut in educational psychology. And as I began to complete or work towards completion of my doctoral program, I was given the opportunity to teach a course. I was not yet with doctorate, and I taught a course on tests and measurements at the Eastern Connecticut State Teachers College, which is part of UConn. So the bottom line is I certainly enjoyed the experience and decided that I should apply for various teaching positions in many, many different areas. So I applied to the University of Maryland, for example, another school I applied to, and applied to Rhode Island College. And
That's where you live in Rhode Island.
well, I was originally from New York. I grew up on Long Island, but I went to school, the University of Buffalo, and focused on psychology. And really tremendously enjoyed my years there, and I enjoyed the interactions I had with my professors. Had the opportunity to do honors work. It was kind of a neat experience. Played a lot of tennis, had a good time, but I worked hard. And so now when I got to University of Connecticut, and I had that experience of teaching a graduate course, I thought, yes, I really think I want to become a professor. And when Rhode Island College opened up the door to me, I took the job thinking that it would probably be a good place to start. And I worked there for a couple of years and then I transferred. But as it turned out, I remained there. So I was very dedicated to trying to work with people that wanted to be teachers and people who were already teachers but wanted to specialize to address the needs of kids with exceptionalities. I was very motivated to do that, enthusiastic about it, energetic about it. And so I dove in, and that initiated my career, believe it or not, way back in 1973.
That long ago, wow.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, so it was trying to help these young students that have behavioral problems that really motivated you, not just to be a teacher, but to help these young students that have these issues. Am I right about that? That's basically the brunt of what you're saying.
Yes, and I think that the opportunity to teach undergraduate and graduate courses was very exciting to me, to have the opportunity to grow in the profession. It was something I was very, very excited about. And Rhode Island College gave me the opportunity as a state college to realize that dream and to expand upon it. So I was working with people that wanted to be teachers, but also working at times with school psychologists, school nurses, social workers, or people in training to accomplish these things. So I had a broad population of folks.
I see. Now, in our recent conversation, you mentioned that your career and services have evolved working more with attorneys. Do you prefer this more working with lawyers than what you originally had started out to do?
Well, I should clarify. The answer to that is that I definitely enjoy working with attorneys, but I'm invariably working with people who have, some of the parents have kids that have certain specialized needs, but they may not be identified as being students who are exceptional in the special education sense of the word. So I'm still working a lot with parents, but the difference is that the cases that I'm involved in now really focus on issues that occur due to the fact that parents divorce, they have different ideas about education, and one parent says, I need somebody to help me to figure this out. I'm pretty committed to school district X, but I don't have the expertise to determine whether that's the best place for my child to be, what supports or services. So I'm still very much involved in working with parents, but the difference is that the work that I'm doing, and it's quite extensive, a lot of the work I'm doing is in different states, although occasionally I get a case in Rhode Island as well.
Now, I wanted to tell my audience a little bit more about some of the stuff that you have done. Dr. Imber has worked as an expert on legal matters in more than 22 states across the nation, including Alaska and Hawaii. However, his practice is primarily in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. He has used his expertise to work on family court matters that involve issues of child education, which you just expressed just now.
Yes.
And this will involve a close working relationship with the parents. Participation in meetings on behalf of students with disabilities or students not yet identified as having disabilities, such as parent-teacher conference administration, meetings, evaluation, team meetings, response to intervention meetings, individualized educational program meetings, and mediation sessions. Now, in our last discussion, you mentioned about this case in Hawaii. Can you tell us anything about this case without divulging any personal information? In other words, can you explain the case without telling us the names of the families that are in court?
Yes, and I appreciate your respect for the confidentiality of the matter, because I have to maintain that, so thank you for that. You have two parents that are living in Hawaii. Neither of them are from Hawaii. Neither of them are of Hawaiian origin. However, they find themselves in a situation where they're no longer together. They are divorced, and there is a division in their thinking. And dad would like the kids just to go to a regular public school. Mom prefers that the kids go to a school where only Hawaiian is spoken through the 5th grade or up to the 5th grade. And dad appreciates the Hawaiian culture. He's been living there. He plans to continue to practice there.
So both the parents live in Hawaii.
They both live there. And I want to make it clear, by the way, when I say I've been involved in cases in something like 22 or so states, that doesn't necessarily mean I've always gone to those states. In many cases, for example, in Alaska, Hawaii, a lot of the work I do is through reviewing of reports and consulting with people, using the phone, and far more recently using Zoom.
Like what we're doing now, exactly like what we're doing now.
Exactly. And dad wanted me to test he has 2 children, he wanted me to conduct testing, which I learned how to do and did using Zoom. I don't always have to do testing with the kids, but in this case, he felt very strongly about it because he was concerned they were not progressing, they were losing ground because they're in a school where their native language, English, is not being spoken. And so you have this difference of opinion. And many of the cases I get involved, this is what's happening. The children may or may not have special needs at the time. Although I will certainly say, when you mentioned IEP meetings, et cetera, I have probably 3 cases that are ongoing in Massachusetts. And in one of the cases, the parent has dual citizenship and very much would like his child to learn to speak what his native language is, even though he's also a citizen of the United States. And there again, the parents have a difference of which city or town the child should be educated in. So I do an evaluation of the schools and compare the districts, and I can ultimately say, all right, District A is superior to District B in many, many ways. Once in a while, I had cases in Connecticut where the differences were very hard to determine, but typically they're not that difficult to determine. One district is in fact better, and then you have to really look at how it meets the child's needs. So it's typically not a mediation situation. This typically results in my having to testify, primarily through Zoom, although I will be testifying in Massachusetts in person on a case I have coming up in April. And this is what happens. The parents don't have an agreement, and the courts look to find somebody with expertise that can say, okay, here's the situation. Not my place to make the decision. That is the sole.
You just present the facts. You just present the facts.
I present the facts and I make a recommendation. I make a series of recommendations. Ultimately, and the attorneys argue, present their cases, and I get called as a witness, but ultimately it is the judge's responsibility. And it's an awesome responsibility. I think the judges take these things very seriously. It's the judge's responsibility to make a determination. And I think the judges seem to be open to input and direction, but it is their decision ultimately, his or her decision.
Right. They, of course, it's their decision. But now, I'm sure many attorneys come to you to work on cases. Is there any case that you would not take on?
Well, certainly if I think the case is beyond my expertise, I'm not very likely to take it on because it's a credibility issue. I don't have any integrity if I take it on. Now, in the past, I will be honest with you, I have taken some cases that I was very, very reluctant to get involved in. I had a situation where grandparents were trying to meet the needs of their grandson, and their grandson was not only blind, but had multiple disabilities. And this is just not my
Wow.
training and expertise. However, they needed somebody to pull the case together. And I am certified as a school psychologist and also as a special education director. And I said, let me think about it, because they said, listen, we appreciate your honesty about not being the right guy for the job. However, we are desperate. We need help. We don't have a solution. Our lawyer has been able to find an expert. Would you at least hear us out?
Yeah.
And I was able to help them successfully. I did help them. And actually the case settled late at night, the night before we were supposed to go to trial. And after that, I got other cases like this. And so I remember an attorney.
It's true. You know, there's so many people that they don't really know who to go to. Like, for some people have really difficult issues with children, with their own children, with grandchildren. They really have no clue as to, you know, what to do. And you could help them along their path in finding the right information that they need to help, even if you are not like an expertise in their particular thing. You might be able to, you know, because of your education, because of your knowledge, you can better support them and help them or advise them where to go. That's always, you know, that's always a help. That's always a help.
And I get phone calls from parents sometimes, and I don't take the case, but I try to give them some support, you know, at least for a little while. I might have 15, 20 minutes, half an hour. I don't have hours to spend, because I'm still, even though I've recently retired from the college after 48 years serving as a professor, I'm very, very active in my practice. I have lots of cases that I'm working on. So I'm happy to help parents and try to give them some ideas and directions. And I mentioned that case of the child with blindness and multiple disabilities. I got a call from a Massachusetts lawyer.
What happened to the parents?
Well, unfortunately, the parents were not able to take care of the child very well. And the grandmother and grandfather said, well, we're going to step in and help with their son's blessing. I think the parents were separated. But I was able to help them to get the child into a school, specialized school that he needed. And so when another attorney contacted me, I said to her, this is not my expertise. And she said, well, you came highly recommended. And I said, you have to be joking. From whom? She said, how about the Perkins School for the Blind? Then I understood why. And I was able to help on several of these kinds of cases, even though that's not my primary area of expertise.
You see how many people love you? You came highly recommended.
I did. But when you say, is there a case that you wouldn't take? Sometimes I get involved in a case and I'm getting paid pretty well, but I'm not comfortable with the position of the parent. That's very rare, but it happens. Or I'm not comfortable with the position of the school department or the law firm. And I've worked a lot with school departments. If I really become uncomfortable, I have an obligation to tell the attorney and let them know. And when I do that, I'm well aware of the fact that there's a good chance they're going to say, doctor, thank you for your services. Please don't do anything further. You're all done. And I realize that's a risk. So when you say, are there cases that I don't take? There are times when I have to say, really based on integrity and ethics, that, gee, I'm not comfortable going in this direction. That's a primary concern.
What's the biggest challenge for you while you're working with lawyers on a case?
The biggest challenge for me is seeing the big picture of that case and getting a handle on it. And I have a case that I'm dealing with currently, and it's in Connecticut. And it's a very, very complicated case, and the parents are miles apart in terms of their thinking. So it's been very challenging for me to get a handle on the whole
that's a challenge. Getting both parents to agree on something. That is a challenge.
They're not going to agree. They're not going to agree. What's going to happen, Cognac, is that I'm ultimately working on behalf of one parent's point of view, and I've had to really work very hard to say, okay, what's the basis of this parent's opinion? And she's been incredibly thorough. So it came to me about a week ago, and now I'm working on a report, and my ideas are coming together. But sometimes it's hard. You might think with my background in education, this would be a piece of cake, but it isn't. Sometimes I really struggle, and I have to figure out, okay, what makes sense and what's in the best interest of that child. And it doesn't come easily sometimes. Sometimes it's a no-brainer, but sometimes, as in this case, it's been a struggle. But I've gotten there. So that's the biggest challenge, I think.
Now, explain to my audience evaluation procedures relative to discipline and anti-bullying strategies. That's a very common thing now in schools, especially, teenagers I don't know, they do bully, but I think that middle school is worse. I think that the kids in middle school seem to do the bullying the most, like the preteens. Am I right about that?
Well, I think that generally is true, though. You can have a lot of bullying going on at the elementary level. And, there again, here's an example where the work I do in behavior management became focused on issues of bullying, because I got a phone call from a person who was head of a teachers union, and he worked with his colleagues in a suburban school, a school district in Massachusetts, where you would say everything's great there. It wasn't an inner city school. And there was a stabbing that took place at the high school, and it was pretty awful. And they were.
Was it a result of bullying?
Well, it was an event. Yes, it was. And so what began to happen with me is that I ended up focusing my efforts and doing workshops on bullying. And at one point I worked with an assistant principal of one of the largest middle schools in the country. And he was really attuned to gangs. He'd go down the hall and flash a gang sign, and the kids would look at him funny, like, did he just do what I think he did? He was in tune, and he got me involved in working with members of the police department.
These are you're telling me that these gangs are in middle-aged, like they're 12?
Middle schools, yes.
Wow, yes. And they're gangs.
Yeah. There were gangs in his school, quite a few. And there were the Crips and the Bloods. I mean, I don't remember all of this, but I definitely remember enough to tell you. I became heavily involved. We ended up doing workshops in the Northeast. We went to many places. I remember presenting during a blizzard in Burlington, Vermont, and we would go to meetings on health and organization. I believe he was a physical education teacher, but he was attuned to the kids. He got a handle on them, and he was able to work with many of them.
How do you stop that? How do you stop the bullying? How do you stop that?
Well, that would require a long answer. I don't know that you can stop it. I think the idea is, how do you minimize it? By sensitizing kids, getting them to be aware of what's going on. You do need to work with your local police, and some people may be offended by my saying that, but to be very honest with you, there are some very capable police officers that work in schools. They can relate to kids, but their presence sometimes is needed for the kids to get the message that they're in school to learn, and they're not in school to pick fights and get into warfare. But you have to realize
you as a professor, as an expert in behavior, why do these kids do this? Why do kids bully? Is it because they are not loved? They come from a bad home? What is the reason behind that?
I certainly think that what happens for some of the kids, it's very rare that you may find kids that are very intelligent that find more subtle ways of bullying. For example, using social media, sending out bad emails, etc. You're probably familiar with that. But
yes, I'm very well aware of it. I'm going to tell you a story. Where after you speak about this, I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is that kids may bully because they don't feel very secure. They want to be part of you get wannabes who want to be in a gang, and they think that's where their identity is, and they don't develop.
It's peer pressure. It's like peer pressure.
There's a lot of peer pressure. Yes, there really is. And I think that some of the kids are capable of inflicting pain on other kids, and they find out they have control over other kids, and some kids feed off of that. There are definitely things. It's power play, but there are things that schools can do in a very positive way by trying to work with kids and meet the kids' needs. I worry about the kids, and I did a lot of research on this. I worry about the kids that are isolated, that don't feel accepted at school. Maybe they're not feeling very comfortable with their home lives. Maybe they're loners, and they get very upset, very angry, and then they decide to go to school and create havoc. They may even have some sense that they themselves may die, but you probably can't imagine the number of kids that have committed murder in schools with their peers and against their teachers or administrators. It's not a minor issue. This is happening all over the country. And I'm not trying to say this to be an alarmist to people. I think there are a lot of good teachers, administrators out there. In any profession, you're going to find people that maybe they shouldn't be there, but there's a lot of dedicated people there. But as dedicated as people are, this has been a major concern. I will just add this point, and that is that some school districts and departments of education are saying, well, we need to focus more on social and emotional education and the needs of kids. And so they're promoting curricula, they're promoting programs to try to get kids to get along. And I think to some degree, this can be very, very helpful. It can be abused, it can be too much of a focus, but quite honestly, I do think it's useful for this stuff to occur. And I think schools they're confronted with a lot of complex issues. And I think most people can't appreciate how difficult it is to be a teacher of young children, or like you say, the middle school kids are really tough to work with at times. They can be sweethearts and tough.
A teenager's closer to becoming an adult, and they are a little bit easier to talk to. But what you're telling me is such a huge problem with these kids, and the discipline. And I would think that a lot of these kids in middle school, their parents don't pay attention. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe they don't. Their parents aren't around. Their parents are working.
Parents may not even know that their kids are involved in some of the activities they're in. It's not the kind of thing you want to say, hey, Dad, guess what I did today?
Yeah.
Went and smashed the windows of a car.
But you know what it is too? A lot of parents, I would think a lot of parents are so busy trying to just to survive in the world that we live in, pay bills and things like that, that maybe they have 2-3 jobs and the kid is home, and that's what's going on. But anyway, I want to tell you about this story.
Share the story with me. Love to hear it.
I'm going to share this story with you. Now, a friend of mine, she has alopecia. She's a beautiful, beautiful girl, black girl, a very pretty black girl. She actually looks better without hair. She has wigs. She wears wigs, but sometimes she don't wear any wigs at all. So she has alopecia, and she put it on her Instagram page about this story. Now, I know her. I've interviewed her. She's lovely. She has her own fitness. Like people go to her fitness studio. She teaches you how certain exercise and how to maintain, your figure and, exercise routines. And it's called Fitness. But anyway, she told me she put this on her Instagram page. It was a horrible story. I'm going to tell you about this story. I'm going to read it to you. A friend of mine suffers from alopecia, which I just said. She read that a 10-year-old child in a school was tormented because this child had alopecia. And the school did nothing about reprimanding these students, and the child killed herself. Isn't that awful? I mean, isn't that the most horrible story you've ever heard? Would you work on a case like that? Would you work on a case like that with between the students? I mean, between the school and the parents, because what happened to their child? Would you work on a case like that?
I would, and I have. I was involved in a case of a child went into the 6th grade. I understood, although I got along fine with this kiddo, his teacher couldn't stand him. He couldn't stand him. The kid was correcting his teacher all the time. He's kind of a know-it-all kid. And I can understand where he was offending the teacher. However, this kid was getting beaten up by his peers, getting beaten up every day. And mom would drive her car and watch this go on, talk to the school, and they refused to address the issues.
Why?
And tell mom, because their bottom line was, you stay home and mind your own business. And this is not the only case I've had like this.
But why do they say that? How could you mind your own business when this is your child?
I understand, Cognac, but they don't. Sometimes administrators, I've got to be honest with you, I've dealt with administrators that would be right on top of this immediately. So I want to be clear about that. But this administrator, this principal was really rough. The special ed director was really rough about it. And I will be honest with you, in this particular case, and even though this went back into the 1990s, I believe, I can tell you honestly that the school superintendent, when the kid was in 2nd grade, wrote a letter to the parents apologizing because he had not been able to protect the child. The special education director denied that letter occurred and existed. Sitting next to me on my left was an attorney. And I said, you're telling me that the superintendent didn't write a letter? And she said, that's right. And I said, then how do you explain this? just went on with the meeting and ignored the fact that the superintendent written the letter. They did ultimately resolve it. They ultimately worked it out, but they took a very hard line. And I frankly, I've been involved in cases where administrators would not allow this to go on. They would intervene, and they did intervene. But this is one of the problems, that this is where parents get very frightened, and they're watching their kids get hurt, and they're feeling that, well, the school's got to take care of this, and sometimes it doesn't happen. So yeah, that's the kind of case I'd get involved in. I would try to resolve things in a positive, constructive way. But if you can't resolve it in a positive, constructive way, then unfortunately, you may have to hire an attorney. You may have to fight for your child's rights and your rights and assert yourself in order to protect the child. And I will tell you this, sometimes parents have said, and this is probably what some administrators would like, all right, my kid's not going to be safe here, I'm taking them out. I'll take them somewhere else.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that a lot of parents,
You read my mind.
they don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn. Maybe they don't have the money to hire an attorney. So what they do is they take their kid out of the school and put them somewhere else.
Well, they may move to another community, but that sounds easy. It really isn't. That someone should have to disrupt their life and their home. And the impact on the other children in the family is a serious concern. So, you know, these problems are not easy to address. And so sometimes administrators will turn their back and act like they don't exist, or they'll minimize it. But I want to be very clear that there are good people out there that administrate, their principals, special education coordinators, and not all the kids that are involved in bullying are kids that are in special education. But in any event, I began to work on these issues. And I actually even worked with at one point I had meetings with the state attorney general.
Wow.
Because this is such a serious issue, and the Attorney General's office was quite concerned about the increase of these behaviors occurring in middle school and high school, even in elementary school. So, you know, I've done a lot of different things in my life. I never planned on doing that, but just one of those things that I got involved in. So it was an application of behavior management. And when I served as a consultant in a public school, I worked very closely with a building principal. We went from grade to grade to start addressing some of these concerns. But frankly, the responsibilities he had were so burdensome that it was very, very hard for him to keep a schedule and to meet in every room. It's a big school. So we met in several classrooms, and you know, generally I got along pretty well with the teachers, and I was able to communicate. Sometimes I would be called in on individual cases when I was working for a school department, and teachers would say, hey, I need some help with this kid. He's getting into trouble with his peers, or he's becoming aggressive with me. And then we, you know, try to meet with the kids, and as a school psychologist, I would try to address these concerns, and I did address them.
Have you ever worked on a case where a kid came into the classroom with a gun?
I never had such a case. I did have a case, maybe two cases that come to mind immediately, where the kids had a knife.
Yeah, that's easy to guess.
And it was complicated as to, you can immediately blame the kid, but you may not know that he was new to the school and the kids threatened him, and he began to feel very, very unsafe. And he had that knife with him. I don't know if it was in the locker. And there were a group of kids that jumped him. You know, he was leaving the school, and they tried, and then he took out that knife. There were about 9 of these kids, and suddenly when they saw the knife, they decided maybe it's not a good idea to try to beat this kid up. And they backed off, but he ended up getting into trouble. And the district, rather than appreciating, and it wasn't right for him to bring the knife, but rather than appreciating the danger that he was in, because he was really a kid that didn't get into a lot of discipline issues. He didn't have a history of behavioral problems. But the bottom line is that they threw him out of school, and mom did not want to hire an attorney. And I felt very strongly that she should do that. But she said she had ambivalent feelings about the whole case. In any event, I urged her to try to get schooling so that he could be schooled at home, which he had every right to have. And that was one of the cases. It was another case in Massachusetts. That was in Rhode Island. And the same kind of situation arose. And so as far as a weapon, yes, with knives, but not somebody bringing a gun. I've been involved in researching such cases frequently. I did this many years ago.
Do you think there's more now because of COVID? Do you think there's more problems with? Do you think there's more problems with kids because they're isolated, more behavioral issues because and then they went back to school?
I think that one of the consequences of this Zoom education, and there are some tremendous benefits to Zoom, but I have to tell you, it doesn't take the place, in my opinion, face-to-face instruction. And it's not just that. Part of what's important about kids being in school is that they learn, hopefully, they learn how to get along with all kinds of other people. And
it's socialization.
It's socialization. And so to the degree they're doing Zoom, yes, I don't want to say they can't socialize, they can, but it's definitely an isolated, that word of isolation that you used, I think is true. It becomes very isolated. And I actually see this to some degree with my grandkids and my, I have a daughter who's trained as a clinical social worker, and she's very concerned about the socialization, even more than the academics. And she herself was a great student in school. She's a great daughter, but she has these concerns, and she's aware that the schools are trying to adjust now that they're bringing kids back and they're educating them face to face. Some of them haven't been in school for a year or so, and they're rough at it. Their skills are rusty if they had them to begin with, and it's not that easy to learn how to socialize and interact with others. So they're going through an adjustment. And I will say that I think administrators and teachers are really challenged by this. They're working on it. In most schools, they really recognize this is a challenge, and they're trying to rise to the occasion, trying to meet the needs of the kids and get them to function and get along better. And that, for those focused on academics, they may say, well, this is not that important, but it really is, because ultimately you have to learn how to get along with others.
Yeah, now I have a friend, he is an actor. You know, I know a lot of show business people. This is rare for me to be interviewing somebody that's not in show business, although teachers, in a sense, because you were a teacher, you were a professor, in some capacity, you are putting on a show. You're getting up in front of an audience of children, and you have to captivate their attention, and that's what actors do.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So in some ways, you are similar to being an actor, but what I wanted to say was this whole experience. Now, let me just explain to you what I was going to tell you about this person, friend of mine. He's an actor. He was teaching acting. The kids in the class, they were adults. They were young people.
Okay.
They were like in their early 20s, that kind of thing, or maybe late teens. But anyway, he would say, "Okay, we're in my class. When you come in my class, you see this pail?" He had a pail. "You see this pail? You have to put your cell phone in the pail. No one is allowed to have a cell phone on them while they're in this class, and you're not allowed to play with a cell phone. This is why I have this pail, because as actors, you need to know how to socialize and how to talk to people, and that's the biggest thing. You can't play with a cell phone when you're acting. You have to show emotion. You have to show expressions. You have to feel who you are. And you're not going to do it with a cell phone.
The phone can be very distracting. There's no question.
Yeah. So he was trying to explain to them, this is very important. If you want to be an actor, you have to show emotion and expression. Negative, positive, cry, laugh, everything. So that's a big problem now with the students, because like you just said, part of this bullying stems from Facebook. Kids putting negative things up on Facebook about another student.
Yes. It's very sad, because once a student has done that to another student, or a group of students have done that, there it is. Now, admittedly, you're going to find some kids who are pretty intelligent who will say, "Yeah, all right, I don't believe that, and I'm not going to get suckered in by that comment." But unfortunately, it does become a source of potential gossip, and it can be so painful for the kids, some of the kids who are victimized by this process, that they literally they feel depressed, they feel isolated, they do on occasion take their own lives. It's very very sad. This happens by the way, it happens even certainly with college students sometimes, and it's really it's really a kind of a heart-wrenching type of thing. If your son and daughter, and your kids might not even come to you and tell you because they're embarrassed. They don't want to say, well, look at the terrible things that people wrote on the internet. So, you know, when I was in high school, which was 1,000 years ago, when I was in high school, I suppose, I mean, I went to school, pretty nice kids, but there were rumors about kids. And that's how it happened back then, through verbal communication. People would whisper or say something about another person. I didn't hear a lot of that, but I heard a little bit about it. Some of the students in the class, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But unfortunately, kids can really get hurt by that. And sometimes it's done playfully, but it's really, it may not come across as playful. It may come across as hurtful.
It happened in my high school too, but that was way before Facebook, of course. But
of course,
I think every child goes through this, maybe not to themselves, maybe it doesn't happen to them, but they know of things that have happened in the school with the other kids, and of course there's gossip. So I've witnessed that, and I know you have too, but it's just,
sure.
It seems to be worse now because of this Facebook. It's just a big problem, really. But I guess
it is, and it's not something easily addressed or easily solved. I mean, sometimes people communicate very positive things on Facebook about other people, and there is that side to it. It's just that to a degree, people can be extremely negative. It can be very, very hurtful.
Well, I know as a fact for myself, I could tell you that what I think of social media, you know, Facebook, Instagram, I find it to be very pretentious. And this is really funny. Wait till you hear this one. On Instagram, I don't know if you know anything about Instagram, but on Instagram, the goal is to have more people following you than you follow them. So you have to make it always look like you have more followers than you are actually. So in my opinion, that's very pretentious.
Yes, it is. It is. It's kind of an ego thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it really is self-centered.
And these are people that these people are preoccupied with this. And therefore, they limit themselves, or what they do is, if you don't follow them, they delete you. They delete you, you know, as a friend, like whatever. Yeah. So I see this going on. They play this game. They want to get more followers. They get more followers, and then they delete you because they got what they wanted.
Yes. What a
unbelievable what goes on. And these are not kids, a lot of them. These are adults.
No, I understand. Well, that's very, very problematic. And thank God there are good people in this world, because there are people that you're describing who could just, they don't value your friendship. It's all about, like you say, it's all self-centered.
It's fake. You know, so I do it because I'm in show business. I'm supposed to do it, you know, Instagram, Facebook, all this, but honestly a lot of it is fake. You know, there are people out there that do follow me. They're nice people, and I follow them back, and you know, there's a community of us that like pink, and we, you know, so, but I can tell who's good and who's not so good.
You like pink.
Yes.
You really like pink?
I do. It's my favorite color.
You're in the pink. I can see that from looking at your background picture and your bow.
Now, I have read countless testimonials from parents and attorneys praising your work. Do you have a case that you worked on that you enjoyed the most? And can you tell us about it?
Wow, I have a lot of cases that I really enjoyed working on. So I don't know that I could identify any one case, but I'll tell you what's fun for me. I do have a sense of humor. And some of my clients really have a great appreciation for that, and even the attorneys with whom I work. What makes it neat for me is that I end up working with people as a team, and we exchange ideas, and I may work with attorneys that are open to the fact that I might know some case law relevant to the matter they're working on. And even though I'm not an attorney, I'm not trained as an attorney, although I've taught legal courses on special ed, that they're open to that, and we exchange ideas. And I find that to be tremendously stimulating and exciting. And I like working with people. I'm very much a people person in that regard. So I like my downtime like everybody else, but I really enjoy that. And I do an awful lot of conferences with attorneys on the phone, Zoom conferences. I do a lot of conferences with parents, and the interaction is very positive. What I really like, what I really appreciate is that I have a difficult case here and there. They're really hard cases to work on. And then the light goes on. And I wish that it went on more rapidly sometimes, but it does go on quite often.
So you like the challenge.
I like the challenge, exactly right. So that's what makes it interesting. But I've had a number of people I've worked with over the years, and for the most part, I mean, I currently have some clients that are just great people to work with. I really believe in them. I believe in what they're trying to do to benefit, help their children. And I work with attorneys that are very dedicated. Being an attorney is, it's a very, very tough job to go in and have to gather information and have to, literally, you're going to war. It's a war of words, but you're going to war. It's not an easy job to be an attorney. I don't think at all. I think that there are some attorneys that are more creative than others, but the problem solving is exciting. So that's kind of what I really enjoy.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So you really love what you do. I could tell. I could tell. I know this has nothing to do with the interview, but I have to ask you, leisurely, what do you like to do the most? Do you have a hobby? Just to let people know what kind of real person you are. Do you like hobbies? Do you like to go out to eat? Do you like to go to the movies? What do you love to do the most?
I enjoy going out to the movies. Absolutely. I really enjoy it. There would be some people would say, you got to be kidding. Aren't you aware that there's a virus? Haven't you heard of COVID? Yeah, I've heard of COVID. You know, I've vaccinated myself twice and I've had a booster shot, but I want to live my life. I enjoy cruising very much. I enjoy going out to eat, you mentioned. I love to go out to eat. Sometimes, even if I'm alone, I go out to eat, but I enjoy going out to eat very, very much.
So you are a connoisseur of the good life. You like good food, good wine.
Yes, I do. But I'm still playing tennis, which is part of that good life. I had a little bit of a leg injury recently, so I've had to slow down on that, but I will get back to it. I enjoy that. I enjoy playing my violin once in a while. I'm not sure that anybody else does.
Do you really play the violin? I didn't know that you played the violin. I love the violin.
Well, see, this is kind of Clinton-esque. See now, that depends upon what you mean by play. I can't read music. I had years of lessons.
John Wayne, you do him so good. You do John Wayne so good.
Well, I don't know about John Wayne right now, but I'll tell you this. Get them wagons moving. You got that straight, Pilgrim? Anyway, so I enjoyed playing the violin, but I never really, I took a lot of lessons and my ability to read music is very poor. But for some reason that I've never been able to explain, I can pick up that violin and I can play rock and roll and I can play show music and I can play classical music. And if you say, where's that coming from? Well, if I can whistle it, chances are I could play it. And I can't explain how that happens. I can only tell you it's very frustrating. When I was in the orchestra in high school, junior high school, I should say, I had a really tough time with this, but I enjoy it. I enjoy playing chess. I enjoy nature. I love nature, getting out and seeing things. I like going to museums. There's a lot of stuff that I like to do. So, you know, I'll tell you what my attitude is. I don't mind working hard. I think that there's something to be said about the fact that even as I've gotten older, I still appreciate working hard and how important that is to have a good work ethic. But please don't misunderstand. I love to play too. I really enjoy it. And I want to have that part of life be an important component of what I do. So right now I'm working very diligently on a report and it's taking up a substantial amount of time, but I am definitely making progress. And I'm convinced that in the next couple of days or so, 2-3 days, I will complete my draft of it.
What sign are you? What sign are you?
I'm a Leo.
Oh, you're a Leo. Yes. That figures.
That figures, right? Yeah. Does that surprise you?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, my boss, I had a boss. He was a publisher of the Long Island Exchange. Now he has the published report. He's a Leo. So
yes.
yeah, he's a Leo.
I'm so sorry to hear that. No, I'm kidding. I
So,
think,
so if I have one last question I want to ask you, what
go
would,
for it.
because you are an expert in many things, can you give my audience good sound advice on to a young person who's starting out in life? What would be a good advice you would give a young person?
Do you mean in terms of seeking uh, uh, some type of work position, or do you mean life in general, or
Life in
you,
just life in general. What would be your advice?
I guess the advice that I would give is that, number one, I would be prepared to commit. I'd be prepared, as you say, I enjoy my work. I'd be prepared to work hard. I would be prepared to understand that no matter how hard I work, there are going to be things and how much I enjoy my work that I'm not going to like to do as part of the work I do.
Right.
And yet you have to have some sense of responsibility. You say, well, that comes with the territory. Now I could say that like John Wayne, well, you know, that comes with that territory, it does. But truthfully, and I would say that however hard that you're working, you need to have time in your life to live and enjoy and find things you like to do and share that with people that you want to be with. And, you know, that's kind of the bottom line. I think that when I was teaching, I had some great students. I was very, very fortunate in having some wonderful students, but I definitely began to see more and more people who have the terrible sense of entitlement. They think the world owes them.
Yeah.
They're owed a good grade they didn't earn. They're owed a letter of recommendation that they don't deserve. And I'm one of those guys, boy, do I want to support my students. But in the rare cases where I don't feel I can write a recommendation, in the rarer cases where the student didn't earn a good grade, then I'm one of those people that says, well, I'm going to support them. I'll help them as much as I can, but I'm not handing out candy here. They have to earn that grade. And
Absolutely.
I think that my advice overall is to try to approach the situation with a sense of responsibility and dedication and find something you really, really want to do. Because there are people who are accountants, there are people who are lawyers, there are people who are doctors, and they're not unhappy. You can tell they're not happy with their work, that maybe it's more than that, it's their life. And that's, to me, that's so sad, because you should be able to, all of us are going to have ups and downs, but you should be able to have things that you can say, these are good things that are happening in my life, and I appreciate that. And I hope that people can seek a mission. It's a lot easier to do this if you have the financial means, but there are a lot of people that started out with almost nothing. I'm sure you know people started out with almost nothing.
I know a
And
lot of
they
people like
succeeded.
that.
And they worked hard, and they didn't get it because they had the silver spoon in their mouth. They earned it the hard way, the old-fashioned way. And that, I think, is, I still
They
think
went
that's
to
very
the school of hard knocks.
That's it. I agree.
Dr. Steve, I love you. Tell my audience where we could go to find out more information. What is your website?
My website is www.dr- or hyphen Dr. Dr. imber.com. If you were to look up special education expert on Google, there's a good chance I will come up at least once on the very first page that you look at. Sometimes I come up as the first person listed. That does happen sometimes, not always.
Well, that, you know, there's always like a war going on the internet, which everybody wants to get on the top. But you are a professional, you are an expert. I wish I was there to give you a big pink champagne kiss, but I'm going to blow it to you.
Aww.
I'm going to blow it to
I'll
you.
blow it back. I'll blow
And
it
we
back.
are
I
going
thank you so much.
We are going to stop recording. We're going to close this out. And thank you so much for being a guest on Cognac's Corner.
You're very welcome. I am
yes,
honored
darling.
to be a guest on your
Yes,
corner.
and we will be back with more Zoom interviews. Keep watching and subscribe to my YouTube channel, darlings. Pink champagne kisses. Well, I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Steve Imber. I certainly did. He was so informative and so wonderful to talk to. And as you know, darlings, I always publish a new video every Sunday or every Monday. And my YouTube channel is all about celebrity Zoom interviews with all kinds of professional people, filmmakers, actors, models, fashion designers, and I also do fabulous shopping hauls with Amazon, Shein, Fashion Nova, Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works. And again, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and always press the notification button to let you know when I publish a new video. I always publish a video every Sunday or every Monday. And I love you all, darlings. And pink champagne kisses.
Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe. Some of you know Bridget Bardot. Well, now it's time for the Cognac show. I said Cognac, ooh, ooh. I said Cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm a bubbly blonde, fabulously dressed to impress. One-of-a-kind girl. I was brought into this world wrapped up in pearls. I love to mingle, though my husband reminds me I'm not single. I meet and greet both the famous and the elite. I ride in limousines, drinking the finest champagne, wearing furs, dazzling diamond jewelry. A girl can't complain. I live the upscale life, dining in the finest restaurants, eating the best caviar for free. And no matter how much I enjoy cognac, ooh, ooh. I said cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. It's been a Crybaby Productions, darlings.